So there's the cassette tape from the very first show that I ever played in my life in front of an audience. And I'm lucky to still have this. And I just listened to this entire recording and I was blown away by how good the quality is. You can actually hear the band really good. The vocals are kind of buried in places, but in other places you can hear them good, especially if you know some of these old tunes from the band PATROLL, which I was in 1983, and then we became Unaccepted. We changed our name in 1984. We were a hardcore punk band based in Central Illinois. But first, let me backtrack a bit before I tell you the story of PATROLL and N.I.L.8. Back in 1980, the year 1980, I started my first rock and roll band with these guys, and this is a photo from the first era of my music career. Yep, as you can see, right there in my stupid lighting, it's a picture of me and the band playing in 1980 in a basement. And we never had a name for that band. We just did some cover songs and we jammed for about 6 months. And then you skip forward to the year 1983, and I'm hanging out at a records shop, and there's an ad. There's an ad that's hung up on the wall at the record shop, which was called Co-op Records. By the way, this video is dedicated to the memory of our good friend Russell Hopkins. May he rest in peace. And he was the guy that worked at Co-op Records that I would talk to and buy my records from. And I remained friends with him up until he passed away just a couple of days ago. So it's with a heavy heart, and this video is dedicated to the memory of Russell Hopkins. Bo Wheel! Anyway, that's an inside joke. So we're going to go back to Co-op Records, 1983. I'm hanging out a lot there for a couple of years buying records. I'm into punk rock, I'm into metal, I'm into rock and roll, but really I'm into punk rock now, and that's what I was into. Reading fanzines, and I found a fanzine called Primitive Noise, and then I found one I believe called Dead Llama. Dead Llama was the first one because I sent a letter to the guy that put it out, who was living in East Peoria, Illinois. His name was Steve Stepe. I believe he was going by Reverend Steve Stepe. And I wrote a letter to him. He wrote me back. And then we started, getting his fanzine in the mail. And then I see this ad up. This is the original ad that I somehow saved all these years that was on the wall at Co-op Records. And I took it off the wall because I knew I was going to get the gig. That's the original letter, the original paper that stuck to this page of this old photo album. And I'm going to read it to you guys. This is the ad I answered to get into punk rock and how I started. And then I'll tell you about the Stepe brothers and N.I.L.8. It says, "No experience necessary. I'm your man," right? I'm like 16, 17 years old, I believe, at this point. It says, "Hey, bub, this is the big time. This is your big chance if you can sing and or at least sound cool and have stage presence. We need a singer for our punk psych country band called Electric Kool-Aid. Recording in the near future. Can be on compilations too. We're into Descendants, Minor Threat, Misfits, and the Circle Jerks. Shows in Chicago and no problem. Must have a sense of humor. I'm your man. No Mr. T's need apply." I think they just meant Macho Men. Remember Mr. T? He was always like, I pity the fool who messed with me kind of guy, just a badass. They were saying no guys with attitudes. We have guitar, drums, and bass. The band so far is made up with ex-members of Negative Element, have record out. That's when I was like, oh, they have a record out? I want to jam with these guys. And it said, and Rights of the Accused, record out soon. That was a great band. Please, no one over 20 unless you act like your shoe size. So I knew these guys were punk as heck. I knew they had a great sense of humor. And then it says, write or send phone number to Electric Kool-Aid, 104 Greenbrier, East Peoria, Illinois, 61611. And then it says, skaters welcome. No BMX. Yep, these guys were all brothers. This ad came out courtesy of the Stepe brothers. 3 guys that had moved to East Peoria in about 1983, I think. And they had moved from the town of Willow Springs, Illinois. It's in the, I think, southwest. Got my cheat sheet. It's in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. And the band consisted of Chopper on the drums, Reverend Steve Stepe from the Dead Llama. Was it Dead Llama on a Kaiser? Or was it just Dead Llama? Steve, if you see this, let me know, man. And then Barry Stepe, a.k.a. Rubberneck, played the guitar. Steve Stepe on bass, Chopper on drums. And, of course, Chopper and Barry had come from a band that had and has a following still, called Dun Da Da. Well, they were called Negative Element, and they had an EP that was very cool and had kind of a cult status around it called Yes, We Have No Bananas. They were known for songs like Anti-Pac-Man and Whatever Happened to Elmer Fudd. It was humorous, energetic, punk rock and / hardcore stuff. It was great, man, and the Stepe brothers, moved from that suburb of Chicago to East Peoria, and they needed a vocalist. So when I joined the band, instead of remaining Electric Kool-Aid, we started to call ourselves Chips Patrol after the TV show that was on at the time starring Eric Estrada. And what was the other guy's name? Hell, I can't remember. But I joined the band, and I was definitely the odd man out. And if you look at chopperstepe.com, you can find more information on his website, and he'll even tell you right then and there, this guy was odd, to say the least. Chopper, I'm just giving you a hard time, bro. I'm not offended. We've talked about this stuff, but I had to say it. But anyway, yeah, the odd man out, because check it out. The Stepe brothers were completely straight edge, which means no smoking, no drinking. They were into skateboarding. And, if I do remember correctly, I think Steve Stepe might have been a little bit not straight edge. Maybe he smoked a little of the wacky tobacco here and there. I could be wrong, but they were pretty much straight edge. And that's no offense to him, by the way, because I still partake. But these guys rocked. They were hardcore, super hardcore thrash stuff. They had a great sense of humor, great record collection. They all did fanzines. They skateboarded. They had like a big half pipe in their backyard. I was the only guy I didn't skateboard at all. I partied, I smoked, I drank. I liked headbanging music, and I also liked total punk rock. But they really did turn me on to a lot of music that I wasn't into at the time, so I got to give a mega kudos to those guys, especially Barry. He was really instrumental in the education department because he was like one of those guys that had all the cool records, and he would tell you all about the best songs on the record and who's in it and where they're from. That was awesome. These guys even turned me on to the Misfits. They sure did. I remember them showing me Walk Among Us, and I'm like, what's this? And then I think Barry says, they're kind of like the punk rock Kiss. And I'm like, what? And that was cool, but with like a horror aspect. But yeah, man, shout out to the Stepe brothers for that, because the education was really cool for me. They put up with a lot of crazy stuff from me because of my drinking and behaviors. But at the same time, they kept me around for a while, and they did dig the vocals, and it was a good time while it lasted. And we did break ground in Central Illinois as far as the punk rock there with other people. We started a scene that did not exist before 1983-84, and that was also with the aid of people like Lydia Paeski, CP, aka Michael Russa, Becky Slane. There's a lot of people around that were doing stuff that were cool people that had Joe Borsberry. That were doing fanzines and music at the time in Central Illinois, specifically the Peoria area. But the Stepe brothers came, and they ended up answering their ad. And they said, come on over, let's rehearse, and we'll try you out. Well, I went over there, and they liked my vocals. And I remember I was wearing my bright purple jeans. That was what I wore all the time back then. I had these jeans that I would buy that this particular company made that were dyed purple, and they were sick. They were super cool, and I loved them, but they stopped making them. But I wore those for years until they stopped making those damn purple jeans. And I remember having red Converse tennis shoes, and who knows what I was wearing for my top. Jesus. I'm going from very early memory here. We're talking 83. So I got to look at my notes. I have to, man. Just to make sure that there's nothing I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, by the way, Alona's Dream Records in 2016 issued a record, if you didn't know, featuring the Yes We Have No Bananas EP from Negative Element, and it also has the unreleased Old Testament demos from the band. So yeah, that's a great record label, by the way. So we get booked to play our very first show. We rehearse. Well, I didn't know what to expect from doing a live show because I'd never done it before. I was excited, hyper, just like I am now, all my life, born with it. My partner here, Tracy, calls it hitting the floor running when I wake up in the morning. I have energy immediately. I don't need coffee, although I love it. So the guys say, hey, we got a gig. We're going to play down in Springfield, Illinois at a private party with the band N.I.L.8. I'm like, yeah, that's N.I.L.8. I'm not sure how they exactly spell it. Does it have periods after the I-L-8 and the N? But either way, it's N.I.L.8, N.I.L.8. And these guys are a force to be reckoned with because they have had a long career. We actually, what it was N.I.L.8 played first. It was at this beach party or something like that in Springfield, though I don't remember there being a beach there. Maybe there was a lake. I don't know. Part of it's fuzzy, but I think it was a beach party at this hall that was like rented. People were drinking beer, and we were like, to me it was weird because like, why were these two punk bands playing for these people that didn't look very punk rock? Maybe I'm wrong and they were, or maybe N.I.L.8 just had that following that they were fun, because N.I.L.8 was great. We'll get to their set list in a minute, because you know what, man? I found the original cassette tape from that show. Yeah, man, it'd be fun to find a record label to put that out as a 7-inch EP, but it's got the entire 4-song set from Chips Patrol from the date of May 26th, 1984. That's the first time we played out to an audience, and that was the first time I ever did a gig with a band in public. Wow. So from 1980 to 84, it took me that long to start performing with bands. But in 83, Chips Patrol was putting out demos, and we even had one come out, a cassette tape came out from Unaccepted on the, I think, Angel Trumpet Records that was run by a legendary guy in California named Robert Omelette. And there was a cover that came out officially to that Unaccepted tape too. My copy is long gone, I believe. That night at the beach party, I was so freaking nervous. It was packed. Right? People were partying, and N.I.L.8 was all set up, and when they were done doing their set, we were going to play a short set of 4 songs, and it was my first gig. I literally remember watching N.I.L.8 play. I just loved them. They were amazing. And let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what they played, and then I'll tell you what happened before I went on that night with Chips Patrol. It'll make you sick. Check this out, man. N.I.L.8 comes out. First of all, they were formed in 1982, punk rock band out of Springfield, Illinois area, featuring brothers Jeff and Bruce Williams. Jeff being on vocals and guitar later in the band, Bruce Williams on bass, and I think Damon on guitar and Wes on the drums. But either way, I know for sure that was Bruce and Jeff. And I think they had a singer at the time before Jeff became the singer named Terry, if I remember correctly. And what happened was these guys got up and played and they killed it. The audience was completely enthusiastic. They were loud. They were very happy to have these guys play. Normally they played basement shows. N.I.L.8 played a lot of punk rock basement shows. They were known for that. And I remember going to Springfield and watching them play one of those basement shows. It was a damn good time. And them guys have a great sense of humor down there and super tight punk rock. That night, I got their exact set list, well, kinda. I know that they started out doing We Are 138 by the Misfits, and it was awesome. I was immediately a N.I.L.8 fan on the spot. And then they went into some songs and covers by a bunch of famous hardcore punk bands like the Misfits, of course, the Bad Brains, Minor Threat, the Circle Jerks. It was really good. They did about 12 songs, and then at the end, they did an original song that's called Boner. Yep. And it's got a great little I got a boner. Big boner. Boner, boner. And then you hear like a whistle. And then somebody laughs. It was just a catchy punk rock song called Boner. I just heard this cassette tape a few minutes ago, man. It was like a time machine ride back to 1984. It was crazy. And the last song they did that night was an instrumental. It was really good. And the crowd was like, yeah, very enthusiastic. And that's when, well, I decided to walk outside because my nerves were like the worst. I've never in my life really had stage fright, because when you're like a lead or a front man of a band and you're the lead singer, it's kind of weird, man, the first time you do it. I bet you most lead singers will say a similar experience. But what happened was I got physically sick. I went outside the beach house, and I can't remember who the hell was with me. It could have been Kevin, I don't know. One of my friends was with me hanging out, and I was outside the beach house, and I literally puked. Yep, I vomited a couple times from pure nerves. pure, like, the opposite of adrenaline. Like, I'm just, like, completely like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. The band was well rehearsed. We were super tight. The Stepe brothers had been playing together a long time, and they were tight, and it was fun, and it was sloppy and fun. And I will always remember Rubberneck's feedback on his guitar. Every time we played gigs, he would never stop. In between songs, it was always this crazy, out-of-control feedback. I loved it, man. It was like his trademark sound. It was cool stuff. And if you listen to the Bloody Mess and Hate, I'm Glad Sid's Dead 7-inch on Puke and Vomit Records that came out in 2018. That's on vinyl, a couple different colors. You'll find 3 of the songs we did at this show because we played... we came out and did Cops and Glass. And the first thing we did, and by then I'd already wiped the vomit off of my chin, and I manned up and went in there, and I'm like, I'm going to do this, man. And I faced the crowd, and I got over my butterflies after the first song. However, when the band started, man, I was really into manic mode on massive adrenaline overdrive, and I just started running around the room like a freaking madman, and people were like, what the hell? I remember some chick screaming and like thinking, this crazy dude, kind of thing. And I remember the first thing I ever said when I walked onto a stage in front of a crowd was, we're from Peoria. And then people went, yay. And then I said, we're Chips Patrol. And then I said something like, Cops and Glass. First song was called Cops and Glass, which is on that Bloody Mess and Hate record, because these guys played on that record. Yep, the Stepe brothers. If you didn't know that, another bit of trivia. Bloody Mess and Hate, I'm Glad Sid's Dead. These guys were on that recording. And then the second song we went into, Cops and Glass, was first. It's all about pretty much, being harassed and beaten up by cops. The second song was called Churchmen. It was about the guys in the 70s that used to come around and knock on doors and talk kids into going to like Sunday school. And if you did, they'd give you bubble gum and candy. And if you rode the bus to school, which to Sunday school or church, which I did sometimes, they would like sometimes have these contests where if we can fill up the whole bus, I will swallow a live goldfish. And I remember this guy from the church doing that several times because all the kids would be like, even if we don't want to go to church, we want to see this guy swallow a live goldfish. And we saw that happen many times. But every time we'd see this dude in a suit and tie walking around, he was always really kind, never any out of line, and he always had a pocket full of bubble gum. And even if you didn't go to church, he would hook you up with the gum, man. I was like 8 or 9 years old at the time, so those were fun times back in the 70s, man. But we're going back to the 80s, damn it. What am I doing going off the rails about goldfish and like churches? Oh yeah, a song called Churchman. That's also on the Bloody Mess and Hate 7-inch, I believe. Third song we did is called Old Ladies. That's kind of, well, back when we were teenagers, even the Stepe brothers thought this stuff was funny. It was about going around and like pushing old ladies out of your way because you're downtown and they're in your way and they're going slow. But it was tongue in cheek. It was a joke. We would never have pushed an old lady because I had a grandmother that I was close to. But at the time, we wrote a lot of songs that were funny, and that you had to have a sense of humor or you just wouldn't get it. And if you're into punk rock, you'd most likely have a sense of humor, unless you were like, whoever. I can't think of anyone that doesn't have a sense of humor. The last song we did was Cow Tippin'. That song was a Stepe brother written lyric and musical piece. The other 3 songs the Stepe brothers wrote, but I wrote the lyrics and titles. But Cow Tippin' was genius because it was about sneaking up to cows in the fields of central Illinois because there was nothing else to do, right? So Barry, I think, wrote that. I could be wrong, but I think he did. If not, Chopper or Steve, sorry. I don't know. I don't know who wrote it. I think Barry. But it's about going up to cows and pushing them over when they're not looking. It's called Cow Tippin', and it was pretty damn funny. Yeah, think about that. Going around and tipping over cows. Jeez, Barry, you're crazy. Ha ha ha. Joking, man. It was a really good recording. Like I say, if anyone has any labels out there that want to put that thing out, I'll get together with the Stepe brothers and we'll, whatever you pay us in vinyl or cash, we'll split it 4 ways. How about we'll make it fair? But so if anyone's interested, you never know who sees these videos, man. I'd like to get that out in vinyl. This recording, again, from May the 26th. 1984, the first gig I ever did in my life. It was fun. It was short and sweet, but it sort of started establishing my reputation as being sort of a madman frontman, kind of a crazy kind of singer, because I remember distinctly, and I made notes when I listened to that recording a minute ago, right up to the first song, people, and I think it was Bruce and from N.I.L.8, because he was really a cool dude and funny. Him and his brother Jeff had these long dreadlocks, and they were just super fast players, real rad guys, sense of humor. And they were like, bloody, bloody, as a joke, you know what I'm saying? I'm wearing all my spiked armbands and my weird stuff, and I just didn't really fit in with the hardcore punk crowd all the way, but I kind of did with like the guys in the Necros, and of course later I got to meet guys in the Misfits, and I thought we had everything in common. But the thing about the Stepe brothers is they were all skateboarders, and that stuff was cool. But I was so busy just drinking and stuff like that. And these days, sometimes I often look back and think, man, maybe I should have just been straight edge and saved myself a lot of misery over the years, folks. I do believe that wraps up my notes. But I want to say, in closing, N.I.L.8 went on to tour North America with a lot of very, very famous bands. Those guys ended up doing tons of albums starting like in the mid-90s, I believe, and they continued playing, and I think they might be going today. But they eventually toured with bands like Fear, the Zero Boys, the Vandals, Faith No More, Smashing Pumpkins, the Flaming Lips, Mudvayne, Alien Sex Fiend, the Super Suckers, the Blue Meanies, the Queers, and dozens more. You got to give it up to N.I.L.8. If you guys see this video, nothing but mucho respect, and sorry for being such a weirdo back then, but then again, weren't we all? But yeah, I do really like the fact that Chopper called me odd, because Chopper wasn't exactly the poster boy for normality, and that, I mean that in a good way. He was always a really cool dude. So I think when we talked recently, started becoming buddies and talking on the internet very regularly, we talked about this stuff, and he goes, dude, I didn't mean it inoffensively, but no. Coming from Illinois, being called odd or weird is actually good, because that suggests that you're not normal. It suggests you're not of one of them or sheep-like. So odd it is. I think that's all the notes I have, ladies and germs. Cheesy. Could you like this video? Would you do me a favor and subscribe to help me build the channel, you punk rock fans and Central Illinois maniacs? And could you leave a comment if you want, good, bad, or ugly? Just don't call me names, and if you do, well, put an exclamation point at the end of the sentence. And also, man, please share the video if you want. And I'm going to try to think of some more cool stories, because this is my book. I'm not going to write a book, man. It's just not, what do you call it? It's just not, you know how you're doing a video and you forget stuff immediately because you're on camera and you just go blank. That happens to me, and I don't want to sit here and edit stuff. So I'm going to sit here until I remember the stupid word. How many of you will sit here and watch me be an idiot? It's just not, it's not a very good idea to do a book for me, because I have to go write a book. That means reliving the past and writing it down. The way I do it with these videos, it's much easier and gentler, but writing a book to me would be almost traumatic to have to relive the past, because there's lots of good days, folks, but there was a lot of crazy stuff in my life that I'd rather not. Of course, at some point, I'm going to have to do it on here or on my upcoming Patreon video, right? But writing a book, you have to write it, then you have to publish it. Someone's got to pay for that. I don't really have the means to publish a freaking book. But the big thing is distributing a book. You've got to get it to all the corners of the universe for all the punk fans that are from Russia all the way over to the Slavic countries to South America. There's punk rock fans all over that were into punk rock and hardcore. And you know what I'm saying? So doing these videos for me, God, I keep spitting. What is going on with me? What a loser. Kidding. But, you know, doing these videos is not only cathartic, but it's also more practical. That's the word, practical. It's not practical to do a book. It's more practical to sit here and talk and do these little chapters of videos. That way you're not just reading something and it's kind of bland, even though I love books. Don't get me wrong. I love them. And I read a lot of books. But I think for me, I'm just going to continue doing these videos. But if something happens and, you know, I can't for some reason, I will absolutely write a book. But yeah, unless somebody wants to, some underground or independent book publisher wants to offer me some kind of little underground deal, I would too. Anyway, thanks again, guys. And thanks to Sister Tracy for this new necklace she gave me. Look at this thing, man. Cheers, guys. Be back soon with more rock and roll, punk, and metal tales from Bloody F Mess Official.